Hello and welcome to the Story Engine podcast. My name is Kyle Gray, and today on the show we have Mitchell Levy. Mitchell is an expert executive coach and creates something called executive abundance, which is going to be a big part of our conversation today through a simple process of helping you articulate the who and the why behind what you are doing in as little as 6 to 10 words. And we're going to be creating a story with him to wrap the magic of how this short phrase can create executive abundance for you. So without any further ado, let's hand it over to Mitchell Levy. Mitchell Levy, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Man, I am so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to be connected with you as well. You are an expert in many different domains and bring them together in a really great and interesting way. So I know this is probably a tough question to ask right off the way, but tell us a bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today. I know there's a bunch of things to choose from, but what's exciting for you right now?
So let me do a 1 to 2 minutes. So I've been in Silicon Valley for 38 years, happily married for 36, have a 27-year-old son. I've created 20-ish companies. I've sat on the board of a NASDAQ firm. I have created executive business programs for Silicon Valley universities, run CEO networking groups, did one commencement speech, 2 TEDx's. As a publisher, we've published over 750 books. I've written 65. My 66 is the most important, and that's right around the corner. I have fun at what I do. What am I doing most today is I show up in 2 ways. So I'm taking my superpower, which is allowing a company or individual to articulate where they're executing their purpose in less than 10 words. I'm taking the superpower, I apply it to both my executive coaching practice. Typically there I'm working with Inc. 5000 CEOs leading the future with executive abundance. And I also apply it to a LinkedIn agency I recently purchased. And there I'm working with leaders tired of slimy LinkedIn sales tactics.
Wow, there's a lot of great things to unpack there. And I love a few things about finding the fun in what you do and then using that. And I think that fun and ease and peace are things that aren't normally highly valued at those levels or understood. But I think that it is abundance in many ways to allow yourself, if you are allowing yourself to have fun, then you aren't under a tremendous amount of stress. It shows a relax and a playfulness, which means your mind's open in different ways. And I just think that that's something very rare and very valuable. And I'm curious first about the application of this statement. You said that one of your superpowers is helping somebody express in 10 words what they're doing. What happens next? Because I'm sure that this is the springboard and the opening point. Where do people go and what do we do once we know this statement?
So now, Kyle, we have a really interesting, by the way, nice question and thank you. So what I did between 2019 and 2020 is I interviewed 500 thought leaders on what is credibility. It was my Napoleon Hill journey. And that's when I sort of fine-tuned and even recognized that I had this superpower. Now, the superpower, I'm going to give it a name. What I've created, and it's a formula, it's called the CPOP, the Customer Point of Possibilities Formula. Now, if I'm going to take this to the next level, and this is where it gets really fun, we as humans, we vibrate at a frequency. And if we're vibrating at our frequency and people understand it, we end up being in alignment. The CPOP represents in less than 10 words the frequency that the person vibrates at. I needed to say that to then answer your question. So I've actually delivered over 1,000 CPOPs to companies and individuals. And here's the shock. The shock is 90% of the time, even though when I'm with the company CEO or the executive team or when I'm with individuals, even though they are in alignment when we're talking and they get their CPOP and they go, oh my God, this is me. 90% of the time, they're going to get out of alignment somewhere between 2 hours and 2 weeks because the world's full of chaos and lots of experts who will give an idea of how they should do what's next in their lives. So, what comes next are different people who have frameworks. I have two frameworks. Kyle, you have at least one framework. And so once somebody gets their CPOP in alignment, they need somebody who they can trust, know, and like, or trust, know, and love, who can help them with a framework. My two are the two I mentioned, the executive coaching piece of it, and also using LinkedIn. It's a framework that I allow people to stay in alignment. Your framework is helping people tell their signature talk and what you do to make that happen. And so what's interesting is applying the formula first, which is really the superpower. I've sort of was a download I received, and then now I actually have executed it over 1,000 times. Having that is great. Sticking with it is what's really important, and it really takes a trusted guide for 90% of the population. 10%, by the way, are the do-it-yourselfers. And I could always tell the do-it-yourselfer, and particularly a visual do-it-yourselfer, because as soon as they get their CPOP, I see their eyes rolling up to the left side of their head, and they're thinking to themselves, oh my God, I'm doing it right now. They're thinking to themselves, oh my God, my website's wrong, and my LinkedIn's wrong. Oh, I got to make changes here. So the 10% of the population that are do-it-yourselfers, when they get their CPOP, they know how to keep themselves in alignment. But the 90%, they need somebody who's a trusted guide that has a framework they could use to keep them in alignment.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that get us out of alignment most? Maybe we all have different reasons. But I think this is an interesting thing to reflect upon. With 10 years in business now, I've implemented, or at least began to implement, a lot of things. And I've found myself successful sometimes and distracted other times. And it seems like I'm not alone in that. And it seems like that's what most of us need. So where do we tend to stray? And what are the symptoms of that?
Ooh. Sort of looking around. I have one. Here we go. You know about the easy button? The old Staples easy button?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if this one still works. Not really. Okay. I think what happens as a human is we're constantly looking for the easy button. And so even if we know exactly what we need to do and how to do it, and we know how much work we need to put in to make it happen, someone will come along and steer you in another direction, or give you another idea, or a quick sort of fast forwarding of things you need to do. And we as humans look for the easy button and we go, wait a second, okay, I could do that easy thing. And then we pay somebody a bunch of money to deploy the easy button. And the thing is, they're deploying typically a formula, not a framework. And the formula worked for them in the past, but doesn't necessarily work for them in the future. And so the important part is trying to stick with your guns. Like, so for instance, if you know you need to be seen as you're updating your website and your business, you need to be seen consistently. That means you need to spend the time to update your LinkedIn. You need to spend the time to update your website. You need to spend the time to update your signature story and make sure that's the story you tell all the time. And many times somebody says, well, you don't need to tell your signature story. You just need to go in and tell people what you're selling. And enough people tell you that, you're going to start doing that. And so we get, Kyle, basically what happens is we allow other people to get in the way of knowing what's right and in our heart because they did something else that worked for them and they tell you it's going to work for you.
You know, an interesting root of a lot of these things I've thought about in a lot of the stories that we're told and we grow up with, like Harry Potter or Luke Skywalker, for example. It kind of plays on this, where somebody has this innate power and it's kind of discovered, and then they're able to access it. Of course, they both had to go through a lot of work, but the way that the movie paces and feels, they like grab this easy button. And so I think there's really interesting roots. And a lot of the times, especially at the people at your level, um, doing the things that are really important for growth, it feels a little bit uncomfortable, and it's often a little bit unpleasant to get that going at first. And in the face of managing the success you've created, which means you probably have some team members, you have lots of clients calling you all of the time, it becomes difficult to make the space to do the things that actually made you successful in the first place. And I feel like that's an ever expanding pool a lot of time as your success ascends. And so I think, probably bringing this back to your framework, it seems like these 10 words can really help me, if we can really tap into the feeling and remember it, make these choices. But of course, we need a trusted guide along the way to hold us to the path.
I'm going to say yes. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share, I'm a framework guy, so I'm going to share another framework. And for those who are listening to the podcast, find this in YouTube, because it's a nice picture that will show you the 10 values of credibility. So credibility is the value in which you're trusted, known, and liked. So Kyle, you asked a question and you had a thought. And what's interesting is if you look at the values or the pillars of trusted, known, and liked, under being trusted, one of the most important elements there is coachability. And what that means is you can't be coachable unless you're vulnerable. You can't be coachable unless you're authentic and you share who you are. And if somebody comes along and says, hey, I could help you there, you got to be comfortable, even if you're the boss, to go, yeah, I'm not the expert. You are, right? The same sort of thing is, I believe life is about being of service to others, servant leadership. And so a lot of times, if I have a board bring me a CEO and say, hey, can you coach this person? First thing, are they coachable? Second, are they servant leaders? Those are sort of, if they're not those, it's possible to teach servant leadership. Sometimes that's a mindset change. It's not always possible to teach coachability, right? And that's what you're getting at, is a lot of people who have been super experienced and very successful, they think they've quote unquote made it. And once they've made it, they don't need to do the work to make it again. And the thing is, life keeps changing so often. On the right-hand side, being likable. Here's the interesting part. Most CEOs think they don't need to show respect to their people, or many CEOs think they don't need to show respect to their people because they're the boss. But the thing is, no matter who you are, and if you look at the two values of likability, one is sharing your stage. We've all heard the story of somebody who had a great idea and their boss stole it. Well, that's not being credible. That's not being likable. And the other thing is just showing respect. If you look at the logs, I was here 10 minutes early. I did some prep on your podcast because to me, that's showing respect to you that I'm ready, right? And I think that's what we forget the importance of, as we're being human, no matter what state we are in life, we always have something we can learn. We always have another way to be of service to others. And no matter how busy, I think the most important part as you grow and become more busy, the things which will continue to help you evolve, those are the things you do yourself. The things that become mundane, those are the things you hire people to work on for you. And that's often how I've done my business. Is I figured out some really big problem. I've put a framework in place. I've then put a series of tools and approaches and workflow documents to make it happen. And then I hire people to do the work.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a powerful fulcrum for freedom. I like what you said about coachability. It's hard to it's hard to instill. In a similar way, I've found that vulnerability can be difficult to instill unless you understand, this sounds kind of rough, but like the strategic purposes of vulnerability. If you know how to use vulnerability appropriately. And I've found that these same groups of people, they've gotten to where they are because they are high achievers. And being a high achiever, in a lot of ways, we attach a lot of value around what we do. And This also usually implies like a deficit in how we feel about who we are, and it impacts what choices you would make if I have a talk or I have a podcast interview or I have something to share. What should I say? And if we are in this high achiever mode, then we will try to give as much information as possible to try and prove ourselves, because we're constantly proving ourselves in this mentality, instead of understanding right now, especially in this day and age, being able to showcase who you are in a way that's effective and in a way that's in service to the audience can create that. It creates that same feeling in your heart that you get when you talk about your things, or the results that you get, and it actually translates it, because we are so focused. We've spent like decades figuring out how to solve a problem. And now when we talk about solving the problem, we feel like we're on fire, but we're missing what the person really needs to hear. And it's a very fine point, because it can feel risky being vulnerable or sharing a story that reflects what your client's doing. And only when you can see, all right, I'm doing this as a service and as a tactic to grow, which I think is one of the greatest forms of credibility building, is being able to use the language of the person that you're speaking to and describe what they're going through, in a way that lands with them, that understands them.
You're really talking about, to some extent, NLP, neuro linguistic programming, and that is seeing who the person is and speaking their language. And I understand how you said it. It is important to be strategic in how you're vulnerable. If you got away and you talk about all the things you do wrong, that's not going to fit, right? Because they're still looking to you as the boss.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, it is so powerful for quote unquote the boss or the boss's boss's boss to be able to say where they need help, particularly if somebody, and this is what's so cool about the younger generation and today's tools they have available. It's if the CEO said, I have a problem here. Imagine if somebody 2, 3, 4 levels down heard it in its raw form and said, yeah, I could fix that. I could probably fix that in half hour or an hour. Let me try sharing something. And then all of a sudden magic starts happening. But what happens is, think about all the layers in the middle of management that need to actually be of service and to allow the respect to let this person actually share things. The society is not, the old command and control society is not built that way. And so life needs to change.
Mm-hmm. So we've explored a couple of qualities about what it's like to be this person. I think constantly looking for the easy button, and then that's something that ends up ultimately distracting and diluting us. And then another big thing right here is we don't know how to ask for help, and we probably don't know what to ask for help for, or don't give ourselves the space to do that, especially if we're in kind of the misaligned state. We're not listening to that 10-word phrase. Is there another quality or essence, like problem, other than these two, a third one that we could round off what this person's experience is like?
Probably the most important is we've been taught that the wider the fish net we cast, the more fish we're going to catch. Mm-hmm. And really the opposite is true. The more narrow you can describe who you are and how you show up, the easier it is for you to be able to speak in the language of the person who really is interested in solving the problem that you solve, either with your product or service. And so I think that's probably the third big thing is simply the trying to solve all problems to all people.
Mm-hmm. Another way that you dilute yourself, which I imagine being in this kind of state of operation as an executive and as a leader demands a lot of your time. And so you don't get as much time to take care of yourself or your family or your health, or just hang out and enjoy the life that you've created, that you really set out to create when doing this hard job.
Kyle, you absolutely focused on when I focus with an executive on executive abundance, it's focusing on 5 stakeholder groups, not just one.
Mm.
And so, what we've been taught, having sat on the board of a public firm, I'm going to say what we've been taught is to focus on investors, focus on that next quarterly report to make sure we don't get anyone unhappy, but we ignore 4 other stakeholders. And so that's what I focus on. And you nailed the head on the one that's most important, is the health and family of the executives I'm working with.
Hmm.
Right. But then here's the surprise, focusing on employees. Because guess what? If you focus on your employees and you treat them well and with respect and empower them to do their jobs, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do their jobs and they're going to make the customers happy. Another area to focus on. And if you make the customers happy and the employees happy, the last stakeholder group to focus on is the community at large.
Mm.
And so that's more of an ecosystem play, is focusing on the 5 stakeholder groups. And it, to me, it all starts with your CPOP. It starts with the simplicity of the audience that you serve, articulated in less than 10 words.
It's like a compass.
So thank you. So you're hearing between the words. So the CPOP is absolutely your compass. And what happens when you wake up in the morning, when decisions come your way, you know whether or not you're north or south or right in front of you. This is why with the 10% of the do-it-yourselfers, when they actually are served their compass, that's when they start looking at internally their website and their social media and their LinkedIn. They go, wait a second, my compass is, when I now analyze what I've put out in the world, it's full of marketing cookie cutter stuff. It's not focused on my CPOP. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you are successful at taking your compass and not only talking about it, your signature talk and everything you do, talking about it successfully, and at the same time, you update how you show up asynchronously. You update your website, you update your social media. What you're successful at doing is turning your compass into a magnet. And I'm going to say it is not easy, but it's very simple. And it all starts with the formula, right? That then drives your CPOP. And after that, everything else is a framework that you need to deploy to get to the point where people want to recommend you, because when they look at you in whatever platform they're using to consume data, they're seeing the same things that, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, or link, for me, it's primarily LinkedIn. When they go there, they're seeing the me that I want them to see, because it's a me of who I am. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I like that a lot. So I want to hear about your personal experience. This is something that you care about deeply and you've spent a lot of time. And I imagine you've been in the shoes of some of these people that we've been describing. Is there a time that you were feeling distracted and deluded from always chasing new easy buttons? You were overwhelmed and you didn't know where or how to ask for help, and you were spreading your net thin, trying to catch as many people as possible because that's all the gurus told you. And it was causing strain with your self and your stakeholders, as you described.
I'm going to say the answer is yes, and now trying to figure out which of many stories to talk about. I'm going to bring in another element. So it might be I know you like 3, so I'm going to bring in a 4th. You can decide which one you like.
I do like 3.
I know. I heard that. So what's interesting is the world keeps changing. So when I finally left corporate, which was in 1997, I was working at Sun Microsystems. I opened up my hangar as an e-commerce consultant, and then the .com days came, and it was so easy to make money. You just had to spell the word e-commerce, and money started flowing your way. And I created a really good business for myself. And I made a number of mistakes of people I hired, people I listened to, money spent that didn't work. But what I really wanted to focus on is sometime in the year 2000, we ended up having the dot bomb. It's the entire world thought e-commerce is no longer powerful, not going to make it. All the stocks lost a ton of money. And anyone who was doing things with e-commerce, e-business, their business essentially went away. And for me, one of the things I realized at that time is no matter what I did, I couldn't have changed that happening. That it wasn't me personally. The world changed around me. And Kyle, at the time, I mean, I had a really nice six-figure business, and at the time, I was running I was a part owner of a CEO networking group. That business was making 60K a year for me, and I just was running out of time. And I was just about ready to throw that one away when the rest of my business went to almost zero. And I thought 60,000 a year, that's really good.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I think if you're an entrepreneur, you need to not always put all your eggs in one basket. So having multiple revenue streams makes sense. And you have to recognize that the world is going to change around you. And at some point in time, you've got to pay attention to it. Because if you don't see the world changing, it will leave you by the wayside. And that's happened to me the second time that I completely lost my business, revenue wise, was as a book publisher. Nice six-figure business from 2005 to 2020. When COVID hit, once again, the business almost went to zero overnight. Because I was making money on book sales of the authors who were speaking at events and going to companies. When they no longer went to events and went to companies, the numbers went away. And so you could say to yourself, hey, I made a mistake. I'm not a good human. I didn't plan my business right. Or you could say to yourself, life has changed. I saw it coming. It just came a whole lot quicker than I thought it would. I knew the .com.
Which of the two were you saying to yourself in 2000?
Oh, what I was saying to myself in both cases were, God, I wish it lasted longer. I knew it would happen. I mean, I knew the .com days were going to end. I just wanted one more year.
Would you describe the office that you were in 2000 in the beginning of the end?
Say that again. I didn't understand it.
Describe your office that you were sitting in, and you were looking down the barrel of this circumstance, and you were sitting there pondering and having these feelings and saying to yourself, God, I wish it lasted longer. What desk were you sitting at when that crossed your mind?
In 2000, it actually was this one. It definitely didn't have the same books in the background.
What else was characteristic about the room that this desk was in? A big building, or were you working from home?
No, this is my garage. So I've worked out of my house since 1997.
Nice.
I think I'm trying to think about it from the perspective of what helps answer that question. I don't know if it was as a sort of virtual type person. It's less about the physical location, and it's more about the clients who are paying me money and renewing contracts.
And they're not right now.
And when they stopped, the question was, well, where's the next amount of revenue coming from? And I need to immediately look at, am I overstaffed for where the revenue is going to be? And do I need to make changes to that? Or do I want to wait it out? Unfortunately, I do executive coaching with a number of CEOs that when COVID hit, they took it in the gut and went in severe debt for a couple of years. And maybe their best answer should have been, well, maybe I need to change the way I do business. For me, I try to match my expenses to my income. And so anytime that's happened to me, I've really, and I do it politely, right? I'm not a hatchet guy, but it's more of the, hey, I let my people know, I don't see where the business is unless you could help get more business. That means over time, I need to let you find other things to do.
You had a son by this time, I believe. He was probably very young.
Yes.
How old was your son?
He was born in 98, so a couple of years.
Just a toddler at this time. You probably weren't hanging out with him while the ship was sinking that much, huh?
So for me, what ended up happening is the first year and a half of my son being born, I was working seven days a week, uh, many hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do like to talk to other people. What do you do? What makes sense? How do you live your life in a better way? And I had this idea that I got from other people, and I shared the idea with my wife. And I said, honey, I got a present for you. And the present was, I'm going to take every Sunday off and I'm going to spend it. My son's name is Duncan. I'm going to spend it with Duncan. We'll call it Duncan Daddy Day. And I thought, man, what a great present to give her. And she was really smart. She immediately said, hey, honey, that's a present for you, not for me. Because imagine if you're the caregiver of a child. Dad takes them once a day, and it's the fun Daddy Duncan day, and the other 6 days are the disciplinarian days. So I accepted immediately, like, okay, we were in Embrace at the time. I'm like, let's stay Embrace. I'll come up with an answer. And so that's when I figured out that I made this suggestion to her. And it was actually in 2000 when the dot, actually it started in, that one started earlier. That started before. But the suggestion was, hey, let's go to Europe. I'll take 4 weeks off a year and you just book the time and I'll make sure I can make it work. And, you know, every time when the money stopped coming in, the question was, well, is that something we need to continue or do we need to slim it down a little bit? Can we afford to do what we set in our lives to do? And the answer is, if we couldn't actually afford to spend the time to go over to Europe and to rent the place and invite a bunch of people, maybe we do a U.S. road trip.
Mm-hmm.
So we did that one year instead.
Nice.
And so it's, I think when you structure a life for yourself where you want to add value to those around you, you have to be of service to them. And I'm really proud of myself that when my wife said that's not a gift for her, that I was able to hear it and immediately come up with something else that has completely transformed not only our lives, but a lot. You know, we've invited, got at least 50 to 60 people over the 25 years to join us. Lots of repeats. We should probably count that sometime. It could be close to 100 because one year we had 28 people join us.
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting that we've really affected the lives of so many people in a positive way. And it's only because I was actually listening. I was vulnerable and coachable when she told me what I thought was right was wrong.
Excellent. I'd also love to hear about a moment. The first moment that you recognized you were experiencing executive abundance and you were like, this is it. Specifically in time and location as possible.
It's a great question. Thanks for asking it.
Yeah.
I'm going to, so almost every day when, I'm going to give you an honest answer as well. I mean, a different answer at the end, but almost every day when I have a week where typically Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, I'm talking to between 8 and 12 people every day. And, or when I interviewed the 500 thought leaders on credibility, I'm like, man, I'm loving my life. I'm still running the business and interviewing all these people and learning a lot. And I was living in, and I didn't know the word executive abundance at the time. I hadn't created that. But as I'm thinking through your question, I'm doing what I love doing. I'm adding value to all those around me, plus me. I do remember right before, I'm going to give you a very specific point in time. I do remember during the dot-com days when I was making a lot of money, allowing my wife to sort of rent a castle in Europe for 4 weeks. That's the time we had 28 people come and visit with us. And one of the benefits of doing that is we would eat dinner. You know, we'd go up to one of the turrets, and start drinking champagne. We'd go down for dinner at 8, and then we would just talk between 8 and 11 or 8 and 12. Right? No TV, none of that stuff. And I remember at some point in time there were like 14 people around the table, and I wasn't actively engaged in any conversation. And I look around and I go, man, I'm at one of the top pinnacles of my life. had my friends and family around, really essentially felt like the king of the castle because there were people at the room that wouldn't have gotten their passports if we didn't offer them that opportunity. And it was so amazing. And I just thought to myself, yeah, this is, I mean, if I'm going to point one point in my life, I mean, I don't know.
Did this happen after the first scene that we
Oh,
discussed?
that was right before the dot bomb. that was, that was like, that was like, yeah, I want next year to be better, but this could be the last year we do this in this style. And unfortunately, I was right, but it still felt really comfortable
Mm-hmm.
and really good. And although the following year was different, it still was equally powerful.
So it's perfect in terms of tone and flavor and detail, but because it happens before, it may be present a challenge to us. Do you have one? Tell me about you were interviewing 500 experts. You were running your own businesses, and maybe you also went out on a nice date somewhere around there.
Mm. I'm trying to think, trying to find the. I don't know if I know exactly what city we went to. But yeah, still running the publishing companies, interviewing 500 thought leaders on credibility, and we still took a month off and focused on whatever European trip we went to. And every time I would tell people about that lifestyle of living, whether or not we spent a lot of money doing it or a teeny amount of money doing it, it still feels like we're living in a world of abundance. You know, I think my wife and I, part of the dream that many people have is they've been told that they need to work their entire lives and work really hard and maybe not like what they do, and if they don't like what they do and they work hard and they save money, they'll eventually retire and be able to do all the stuff they want to do, but at that stage they may not have the health or they may not have the money they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing those holidays, doing that. And by the way, even though I was in Europe, any client who needed me could always reach me. I may
Yeah.
not be as fast at responding. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually,
Mm-hmm.
I know I was not as fast at responding. But the interesting part is it really felt like, and thank you for tying this all together for me. It really felt like I was living for today, not for tomorrow.
Mm.
Um, when I'm able to the coolest thing in the world is when I sit with somebody and if they're really open, I can articulate their CPOP in less than 10 words. Sometimes it takes me a minute or two. A few, I haven't shared with you what it was, but it took me about a minute, right? I've got for you 1, 2, 3, 6 words, right? That expresses who you are. When
Great.
I do that, it feels so glorious. And when I could share it with the other person, it feels amazing. And that's what I fine tuned during the interviews.
Mm-hmm.
What gets really powerful for me is when they stick with it and they continue moving forward with it. And allowing a company to from tops down be able to bring abundance not just to the CEO and money, but also all the employees that they're living an abundant life, whatever that might mean to them, to the customers who are being treated fairly, to the community at large. Man, that's where I'm at right now. So I'm the book is about to be done. I'm in the PhD program. My dissertation's on executive abundance. And so I'm excited about that new chapter of my life
Mm-hmm.
of helping to bring that to those who are inclined.
Yeah. Great. Would you
I
like
don't know.
to?
I don't know. I think I jumped around. I don't know if I answered your question. So sorry about that.
My next question is, would you like to hear your story?
Oh, how could I possibly say no to that?
All right. God, I wish it lasted. I wish it lasted longer. I knew this would happen. I found myself in another situation just a few years after leaving corporate and starting my own business. I had made a hugely successful e-commerce business, and everything seemed to be going great for a long time. I was hiring a big team. I was making good money. And all of a sudden, the world seemed to change without me knowing. My revenue started going down. And I can remember my home startup, this place where I once felt invincible, where I was channeling as much money as I needed. Now I'm wondering, can I keep my staff? Am I going to go into my debt? My income was staying the same and my expenses were, my income was going down and my expenses were staying the same. I found myself living for tomorrow, constantly waiting for the next thing before I could really start living. Once I achieved a certain goal or achieved a certain thing, then I could have more time because I was working 7 days a week. And I remember talking to a few friends and getting an idea about how to live a better life. I had a son at the time who was a toddler. And I remember after a long day going into the kitchen with my wife and saying, honey, I've got a present for you. I'm going to take every Sunday off. Every Sunday is going to be Daddy Duncan Day. And she looks at me with a little bit of pain in her eyes. And she says, that's not a gift for you. Or that's not a gift for me. It's a gift for you. And I realized in that moment, as a chill went down my spine, that I've been out of alignment. I had created some success financially, yes. But to do that, I was ignoring so many other crucial elements of my life. I was ignoring myself, my family, and now my employees were on the line too. How did I find myself so out of alignment? How did I find myself going down this road and thinking that I was doing everything right and then still finding myself here? I realized on that day that I needed to start making decisions differently, that I needed to tap into something deeper. And I wish there was somebody that could see who I was and what I was doing and give me a way to navigate not only the constant decisions and challenges that come from running a business, but to be able to see what's happening in the world around me and make the right decisions to adapt. I wanted abundance, not just in terms of money, but in all areas of my life and my health, with my employees. I wanted to give back to my community. And most of all, I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to know what kind of work to do and what was aligned with my nature. And over the course of many years and a lot of businesses and a lot of costly and painful mistakes, I began to chisel out a formula, a compass for myself, a series of 10 simple words that I could feel and tap into and use as a way to guide me, not just to business success, but to real success and abundance in every area of my life. I can remember years later signing off of a 500th interview and realizing how much my world had changed from that moment. I had several successful businesses that were supporting me with teams that I trusted, were solving problems for me. And I was doing art. I was creating incredible, impactful interviews with the greatest experts in the world. And I was sharing my new gift of helping them articulate this very phrase and this very compass. I can remember finishing up those interviews and then hopping in a plane with my wife and son and traveling to Europe, putting our phones on airplane mode and being able to enjoy life and experiences together. And every time I told people about this plan and that's what I was doing, they were like, wow, that sounds nice. I wish I could do that. What I do doesn't work like that. My business doesn't work like that. My life doesn't work like that. And I realized how many more people could be impacted with this process, with this system, with this framework. And so today I'm going to teach you how to create your own CPOP and probably introduce the name of the CPOP. But anyway, that's what I have to share with you today.
Dude, that was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's interesting. I would tell elements of that story. And the thing is, I miss some of the important, crucial elements that allow people to taste it and feel it and put their arms on it. And you added that. So I'm looking forward to re-listening to what you just did. It definitely shows your superpower. So thank you.
Thank you, Mitchell, especially as an expert in what you do and somebody who's very well articulated. It's an honor for me. Do you have any closing words, and where can we go to learn more about you?
Would you mind if I shared in a minute my concept of the CPOP and tell me more? So the interesting part, and we'll talk about this for a second. My CPOP for the LinkedIn program I have is leaders tired of slimy LinkedIn sales tactics. Whenever I say it, I always get a smile, and somebody is is often, what do you mean? How do you do that? That's the tell me more. Tell me more for me. What I'll tell you is I've been on LinkedIn since before they were making money. I was in the room with 2 of the 5 founders, and I was paid to write and publish LinkedIn's first book. I've looked at over a couple 100,000 LinkedIn profiles. So what I do is I help those I work with focus on the 5% of functionality that brings 80% of value. What's interesting when you hear that, Kyle, is when you have such clarity of the playground you play in, anything you say afterwards has a lot of credibility built on top of it. So that's what I do. And stick around afterwards and I'll tell you what your CPOP is. And maybe we'll talk about that another time.
I'm excited for it.
To reach out to me, it's fairly simple. It's just going to my website. It's mitchelllevy.com, MITCHELLLEVY.com. And there you could see the latest programs and things that I'm focused on. If there's anything you're interested in, like a clarity session, you could sign up, or to join me on LinkedIn. All that's there. And most importantly, if you're inspired and you want to book time on my calendar, you could do that from mitchelllevy.com as well.
Mitchell, thank you so much for joining us today on the Story Engine podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me and letting me see your superpower.
Thank you.